I know that you're part of various think tanks, one to be specific. Have you had conversations with think tanks here in Nepal? And what's your thought process? I remember Shreya was picking up on that earlier in the morning when we earlier before we started the podcast. What's your thought process when it comes to here and what she was also mentioning? I just picked up on that early on, even before I came down. What's your thought process on that? Like, how important are think tanks, and how important are the conversations that come out of think tanks that's very, very valuable for policy making?
So I think think tanks are very critical. They are the space where you do independent thinking. We should not be in a rush that whatever the think tank says gets translated into policy within 2 months or 3 months. It takes time, because very often think tanks are thinking of alternatives, which is not the set way of functioning. So, if you look at think tanks, they would be doing 2 or 3 broadly different pieces of work. Well, one is to actually analyze what's happening, how the policy is getting implemented. And they would have small tweaks as suggestions. That's something a lot of governments do actually pick. And that's worthwhile. But the second piece is to actually look at long-term policy frameworks. And that's not going to happen quickly. It takes time. But that's really the role of think tanks. And they'll do it. They will be persistently bringing out that research, facts, data analysis. They'll gradually win over new champions. Those champions have to be somebody from the bureaucracy, somebody from the political system, people like you who play a very important role from the media. Once you start recirculating those ideas, they become more central to the public sphere. And that's really the critical shift that happens, and that's important. But the third, I think, which is important, I love it, it's a romantic role of think tanks, which is of thinking of fundamentally different alternatives. So today, if you look at, say, in Europe, there's so many groups which are now talking of degrowth. We started from talking about Kathmandu, how it's become congested, but you would probably not hear people talking of degrowth. And I completely understand, because it's a different context here. But people are talking of degrowth, that you just cannot sustain this level of consumption in the world, and therefore we'll need to reduce the growth that we work with. So that's an alternative worldview, and it'll take time. So that's something very romantic, I would say, but it takes much longer. So think tanks are critical. Please invest in it, respect them, ensure their autonomy, that they're able to think freely. They'll help the country.
तपाईले हाम्रो क्लिप एकदमै एन्जोय गर्नुभयो होला। अब पुरै भिडियो हेर्नको लागि चाहिँ युट्युबमा सब्स्क्राइब गर्न नबिर्सिनु होला।